Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Welcome to a special episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. And what makes this so special? Well, I'm with a lady, Nicole Qualtieri, and she's the hunt and fishing editor for GearJunkie. Never gone to GearJunkie? You need to. Why? Because what happened on Mont Blanc most recently? You got to tell the people what the heck happened.
I think that it was this morning, a French skier / alpinist set 2 world records by ski base jumping Mont Blanc. So the first record was no one's done it before. And the second is he actually got the Alps trilogy. So he's ski base jumped the Eiger, Mount Eiger, the Matterhorn, and Mont Blanc. So it's a pretty fun video. It's really short. But yeah, we do a lot of like that world record type mountaineering, skiing, outdoor rec.
And where can they see that? Where can they see that clip?
They can just go to GearJunkie.com. It should still be pretty close to the top of the front page.
And so, folks, GearJunkie is obviously about gear, but Nicole was hired to get into hunting and fishing. And through her wisdom, and she represents the fastest growing demographic in hunting and fishing, being a woman. And I'm going to screen share because we're going to go to a topic that she talked about on May 29th, 2019. It's time we kill these 5 topics about sportswomen. And as an influencer in the outdoor industry, I want everybody to hear this and take it to heart and take action. Just don't go, oh, yeah, well, no. Listen to what Nicole has to say. So, Nicole, take it away. What was the backstory of this article, and what's a message you want people, male and female, to get?
Yeah, so this article was really kind of spurred. This is my 5th year in the hunting media world. So I think that I have a pretty strong finger on the pulse of the different conversations that happen, you know, whether it's through something like podcasts or television shows or even just like the day-to-day conversations that women, and I'll say that this is kind of more focused on women that are in the hunting industry, like on a day-to-day basis. But I also know that there are women outside of the hunting industry that face a lot of these conversations too. But really, I just kind of noticed these repeating conversations that were happening over and over again. And I felt like they started to get in the way of just having real conversations between not women and men, but just between hunters. You know, like I see women as full participants in the world of the outdoors. And when we're constantly talking about the color pink, or having to prove who we are as sportswomen, or men feel like they need to apologize to us for something that really like is just a result of having 90% men in this space, you know, and that's changing, right? But I think as it changes, it behooves us to have better conversations. And right, the crying piece, that's another good one. And so, you know, I think the point of the piece is not to alienate people, it's to bring us together, so that we can just have more substantial conversations around hunting that don't feel so split, right? I don't think that a conversation about shrink it and pink it is even relevant these days because I have an entire closet full of hunting gear that's not pink and it's made for women and it fits well and it does its job in the field. I think there are some conversations that we can push past and hopefully like get to the heart of what it is that we're doing, which is getting outside, hiking, fishing, hunting, all of these things, and talking about experiences rather than the fact that I'm a woman, which is certainly part of my experience, but it's by far not the entirety of it.
Want to become a smarter deer hunter? Know when to hunt, where to hunt, how to hunt? Well, Deer Hunting Institute Part 1 was created to do exactly that, because many people have told me they struggle with spending all days in the wood and never seeing a deer, only shooting does and young deer, leaving the woods empty-handed way too many times. Found this wonderful, but just couldn't get on them, having difficult finding a place to hunt. recognizing possible mistakes you're making every year, having tried and failed to find qualified mentors who deliver results. If you had these frustrations or struggles, go to deerhuntinginstitute.com, and there you'll find a 13-module course to help you solve these problems. Again, go to deerhuntinginstitute.com and find some answers.
What I got from your article was men grow up and realize that there are some women that can out-hunt and out-fish you. So get over it.
Listen, there are a lot of men that would hunt me into the dirt. So, like,
I agree, but there's also some women that I know. Kirsty Pike from Proas, she hunts over 200 days a year. She's grown her company, has been very successful. And
yeah,
she might hunt rabbits and grouse. But she's out there hunting. And let's see, one of the extreme huntress, Eureka Arnson from Sweden, she went to Azerbaijan and got a tour. And so they're mixing it up.
There's some really badass women out there. I don't necessarily see myself as one of them, but I'm happy to speak up for them and talk about them. And I think that a reality of women and men are both capable of doing these days is pretty incredible. And a lot of that does go back to gear, right? When we think about the mountaineering technology that's made its way into hunting gear. But in my opinion, anyone who buys a tag and attempts to do something has earned the right to call themselves a hunter or an angler. Like, if you go to Hunter's Ed and you do the whole thing and you go out there with a rifle and your blaze orange and you try, you've met the base requirement. And I think hunting has become so aspirational that, or at least hunting media has become so aspirational that it can feel really exclusive to a certain type of hunter. And I just don't think that that's like reflective of the demographics at large.
No, and everybody's talking about R3 and recruit, retain,
reactivate.
And reactivate. You think about that. States are getting involved. Heather Caulfield is my co-host, and she speaks to that for she chairs the state of Minnesota, R3. And it's a bigger and bigger area. But the thing is, we have to welcome people. And I always thought about it, when we're around the campfire, we're all common ground.
Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't really matter. If you're sitting there at the campfire, no matter where it is, it's all common ground. The checkbook goes out, the agenda goes out. Everybody's there because they love the journey, the adventure, and the hunt. Just the adventure of it.
Yeah, I'm with you. My favorite thing isn't necessarily taking the life at the end of my gun. It's the challenge of getting to that point and then being able to process an animal and to really dig into what for me is a very spiritual experience. That doesn't have to be that way for everybody either. I think in this particular article, I'm definitely calling things out a little bit, but I think that if you read into the context, I tried to be funny and light, and I really wanted to make it so that people didn't think of it as an angry piece. I wanted it to be a piece that helped people come together. And I talked to a lot of women before putting this piece out there. When I wrote the piece, I sent it to about 8 or 10 women to read through. I sent it to a couple of men because I wanted the feedback and I wanted to know, hey, am I out of bounds here? Am I alienating people? Am I doing the wrong thing? So I think that when it comes to calling things out within a community, we also still need to be kind. That was a huge focus for me in writing this piece.
I think we have to be more than kind. I think we have to be, from a man's point of view, just accept that women are hunters, period, and give them the same thing that we would do if we saw a buck in Wisconsin in the back of the truck and it was killed by a guy or a gal. We're still going, oh my goodness, what a beautiful buck. And they do that in Wisconsin. During deer season, especially during the rut, guys go to bar to bar, they never have to buy a drink.
Yeah, I have had that happen in Montana. I've been able to pull up with a deer in the back of my car. And I think I told you before we recorded, I killed my last 2 bucks by myself on public land in the backcountry. So it's one was on public land. The other one's kind of a crazy story, but everything was fine. And just the way hunting goes, right?
It worked out.
It worked out. And I've never felt such a sense of pride and capability as when I put those 2 bucks into my rig and got to bring them home and bring them to see my friends at Bozeman. And it's a pretty incredible experience to be able to do it from start to finish.
Well, it's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's one of the growth areas why women are the fastest growing demographics. Hint, hint. And all the companies know, all the manufacturers know about this already. But I think the hunting community in its entirety really needs to embrace that more. It's coming along, but still there's some times and places that we don't do the best job we can.
No, but I think that like we also are in a time where there are a lot more women in the industry. And like, I think one thing that I've learned in the position that I'm at GearJunkie is that I don't work for an entirely hunting and fishing publication. Like my publication is mostly focused on outdoor rec. So luckily I kind of have more of a platform than a lot of other female writers that I've met that are solely in the hunting space. I've had a few female writers reach out and say, hey, I could never get this piece published where I work. And so I think that there's also been a little bit of censorship, or women don't want to put themselves at the front of a difficult conversation, which I can completely understand. But I feel behooved in where I'm at and the platform that I have. If I see something that isn't jiving with my own sense of integrity and that is echoed around me, then I have a space to write about it. So there are a lot of people that disagree with some of the points in this piece, and I think that that's great. I think that's what makes...
Embrace that. I mean, come on.
No, yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying is like, it's a democracy, right? Like we need to have... So I'm always happy for people to take me to task as long as like they're doing it in a way that's not abusive. And luckily, like, I think I haven't had to face much of that.
And I think you got a company behind you that is supporting you all the way. Now, let's talk about Huntress and Hunter. In your article, you talked about glamming up on the womanizing side of hunting. So you called a huntress rather than a hunter, but I consider women who hunt as hunters.
Yeah, some women just call themselves huntresses, which I think is totally cool. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to add femininity and like your experience as a woman to like who you are as a hunter, that's really cool. Personally, like maybe it's just the fact that I grew up a little bit of a tomboy. Like I just call myself a hunter. So I think there's been a pretty big, I would say that it's kind of like, you know, there are like the concentric circles of hunting communities. And within my hunting community, I've heard this one a lot. I almost just kind of think it's silly. It's like, I think women have been kind of blamed for using huntress as like this kind of like sexy, glammed up thing to get attention from men. But like, I also think that, you know, if someone wants to express their femininity in the field and wear makeup and have curled hair, I mean, you have a badass hunter like Jana Waller, you know, like who is always looking like the best that she possibly can. And I totally think that's awesome. I mean, I feel like it's just something that's been blown a little out of proportion.
And media goes to town on that a little bit too.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
So let's talk about final thoughts and we're going to wrap up this segment.
Okay.
If you don't, who will?
Yeah, so this conversation, so I have a really good friend named Chelsea Cassens. I write there that she's a hunter and angler. She was actually featured in the New York Times recently on a piece that they did about hunting elk in Oregon. She's a lifelong hunter, so she comes from a different background than I do. But we bounce things off of each other a lot. And we were having this conversation about these things that we were frustrated with. And I was like, should I write about this? You know, and her response was basically, if you don't, who will? And I think that that was a really motivating factor because we talked a little bit about my platform. You know, I do have an editor-in-chief who is a hunter. He's also like a badass ultra marathoner. He runs these like 100Ks, which I have no desire to ever do. But then
that's sick.
Yeah.
It is. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I can't even grasp that concept.
He just got a German short hair pointer, which I was like, he's basically like the human version of a GSP. So it's like the perfect match for him. But he's also a badass archery elk hunter. Like he's an awesome guy. He's a killer upland bird hunter. But, you know, like he supports me in these pieces. When I sent this to him, he helped me really clarify some pieces. So I don't know if you've heard the term mansplaining. Have you heard that term?
No.
Okay. It's kind of like a colloquial term that's going around where like men explain things to women that they already know about. So it's just kind of a jokey kind of term. I tell my boss all the time that he's always welcome to mansplain me because he's almost always right. That's our running joke in our little editorial conversation on the back end of this. But he really helped me put this piece together and get it to a point where I felt good about putting it out there.
Yeah, I think it's a great piece, and
Thank you so much.
it can't be shared enough because to me, it gets right to the heart of the matter. And I love not going round and round the oak tree, but getting to the heart of the matter and saying, here's where we are, here's the future, embrace it. And if we do that, then that helps grow R3, which everybody's concerned about, because we need more people to buy more tags. Our hunting heritage, as we know it, is going to go away.
Great. Yeah. And I guess that gets to really my last point, which is hunting to me isn't a gendered activity. When I'm hunting deer, I'm not sitting there thinking about the fact that I'm a woman. I'm sitting there thinking about the fact that I'm a hunter and I want to fill my tag. And I think that there's a heck of a lot of commonality in those moments that have nothing to do with whether we're a woman or a man. So yeah, that's kind of that closing thought on this piece. And I hope that people see that as something to lean into. And if we can kind of stop having these gendered conversations, I think we'll end up hearing a lot more about women's real experiences in the field. I think that there are some differences that happen out there, that I've experienced, whether that's been in an all women's hunting camp or many times being the only woman in a camp of all men. So I think I love both scenarios, and I don't think that either one takes away anything from the other. I think it just allows us to lean into a different experience. And really that's what I'm about, especially in my role as a writer. I want people to have good experiences, and I want there to be room for everybody in this circle.
Do you want to become a smarter whitetail hunter? Knowing when to hunt, where to hunt, how to hunt? Over the past 4 years, people have asked me, hey, I'm struggling with spending all day in the woods and never seeing a deer, only getting opportunities at doe or young bucks, leaving the woods empty-handed too many seasons. Located the deer of a lifetime, but just flat out missed. Having difficulties finding a place to hunt, recognizing mistakes that you're making over and over again, and you want to eliminate them. Having tried and failed to find qualified mentors. Well, you've come to the right place. Why? Because Deer Hunting Institute Part 1 was created by me, Bruce Hutchin. It's a 13-module course that'll talk about being lost in the deer hunting forest. Never hunted. What is a hunter? What is an adult onset hunter? What rules apply? Finding a mentor, choosing a weapon, finding a place to hunt, scouting a hunt location, stand sites, stand access and exit, reading sign, and when to hunt. All these are available for you at deerhuntinginstitute.com. Go now to deerhuntinginstitute.com and sign up for the best deer hunting course in America.
If somebody wants to read this article, where's it at?
So you can still find it on GearJunkie.com under our hunt and fish. So if you hit topics, you can see it kind of to the right of GearJunkie. You'll have a drop down and you can find hunt fish there. I have it up on the links in my Instagram profile. Yeah, so if you go to topics, it's just a couple over. So there's hunt fish is right down at the bottom. And yeah, and I'll tell you another thing that I'm really trying to do here, and you can sort of see it as we scroll, is talk about things that the hunting community, when you look at the outdoor rec space and the hunting space, I always kind of joke that hunting is about 10 years behind talking about a lot of these things, whether it's conversations around women, or if you scroll up a little bit, there's a conversation on mental health.
River runs through it. Yay.
Yeah, there you go.
I just had to go to that.
Well, any excuse to put Brad Pitt on an article that I write is fine with me. So, I know. Cheap joke.
Where do you want me to go?
Well, I was just pointing out that there's a sporting view on mental health with Dave Brinker. We're talking about sportswomen. We're talking about even things like size inclusivity, which is how does someone who's a plus size or a guy who's big and tall find hunting clothes that are going to serve him in the field? So there are all these different things that I think the hunting industry is catching up on, but nobody's talking about them. So it's really it's my goal as a writer to give screen time to these issues. Or even what's going on in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. So you can see the Welcome to Gwich'ezee. That's a pretty incredible film about how the indigenous people use the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge for sustenance. So I think there are so many different things that we can talk about, whether it's conservation, accessible gear, hunter's education. putting a better face on hunting from a media perspective. And those are all things that I'm passionate about and will continue to do as we continue to build out on the hunt fish space for GearJunkie.
And thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm going to stop the share. And you talked about it, and so we're going to save it to the end. But accessibility and gearing up, that's a topic I want to spend 5 or 10 minutes on. In the warm-up, we talked about it because everybody in my new Deer Hunting Institute Part 1 course, I got a whole section on how to find a place to hunt, because even though there's millions and millions of acres out west, it's still, even in Bozeman, it's getting more and more landlocked.
Well, yeah, not even landlocked around Bozeman, it's really highly pressured. So you have to get really smart about how you're using tools, doing it in a way that's going to be fruitful. So yeah, I hear you.
So let's talk about accessibility and what you want to unpack on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been talking about R3 a little bit, and I think that like what they're doing is commendable. I think that hunting is kind of a difficult thing to recruit people to. I'll tell you this, I didn't shoot a gun until I was 30 years old. So I started hunting that year, the same year that I started shooting. This is really, I know, my goodness. This is actually perfect because I would need to go ride my horses and hopefully this storm will pass over while we're talking. But anyway, so R3 is really trying to do something that needs to happen in this place that we're in, right? So whether it's like buying more tags or educating more hunters or bringing more people into the fold, I totally understand the point. But I think that like one of the things that when I was working at Meat Eater that we did almost accidentally was we brought in people to hunting by talking about food and talking about this accessible, grass-fed, grass-finished, organic meat that essentially lives on the landscape, right? And I mean, when we think about wildlife, they're an incredible source of food to put on the table. And I think people don't know where to start with that. And so like what I was able to learn there, especially as I was learning how to hunt, was how to communicate about it to people. And then just really get down to those like baseline points. Like what are the 5 things you definitely need to take into the field, right? So I think that the best we can do to bring people into the fold is 1, to share our meat, or what Steve calls venison diplomacy. Stephen Ranella calls venison diplomacy, which is one of my favorite terms in the hunting world, because I will tell you that nothing will change somebody's mind like a perfectly dry-aged venison steak, which is something that I do on a pretty regular basis. I actually have a whitetail roast in my fridge right now, dry aging. So I'm excited to eat that whenever I get a chance to get to dinner. But I think venison diplomacy is a big part of it. I think that the other side of it is making information accessible. So like if you go to GearJunkie, one of our most shared posts is a resources for new hunters that takes them through the fact that you need to do hunter's ed, figuring out where your local gun range is to help you learn how to shoot, connecting to nonprofits like backcountry hunters and anglers. The reason that I found my hunting community was because I joined Bozeman's BHA group, and we met once a month, did events, and I got a ton of hunting partners out of that took me on my first hunt, that helped me with processing my deer, that became my close friends. So I think like having those communities accessible to people through nonprofits is really important. And if I can continue doing my part in educating people and making gear accessible, I know that I'm ranting right now, I guess. But, you know, I don't think that people need to spend $2,000 or $2,500 to get into hunting, right? I like to tell people I killed my first deer in yoga pants from Target, like an old beat up J. Crew jacket and a pair of Sorel boots. So it doesn't take camo to kill an animal. It doesn't take an expensive pair of boots, depending on where you are. But what it does take is an education in hunter safety, a good firearm, and hopefully a mentor to walk you through the process.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
A safe community, that's one thing that we talked about in the warm-up, and I want to talk about that because one thing women do better than men typically say, look at me, look at my buck, look at my elk, look at me, basically look at me, look at me. But women say, hey, I went out and I got with Satterley and Jane, and we went up to Eagle Lake and we caught all these trout. We ate them, drank some wine, sat around the campfire, had a great time, and came home. Rather than look at me, look at me. There's just a short difference of the story. The women tell the story and they like to get with other women telling stories and sharing I think women share a heck of a lot better than men. Just look at a coffee shop. There's X number of men and X number of women. And there's larger groups of women than men.
We're definitely communal creatures, right?
Yeah, question about it.
I think that men tend to be really competitive. I think that also a lot of men attach their masculinity to their hunting. You know what I mean? Like the bigger the buck, the more of a man they get to be.
Testosterone. It's all testosterone.
Yeah.
It is.
Which to me is just funny. But I also appreciate those stories too. But I don't know that women necessarily, we don't have any societal constructs telling us that we should be killing a huge buck or a huge elk. And I think that there's a lot of new space in the hunting world for women. When we get to go, that is so funny. Honestly, I hosted a camp with 18 women this past fall in the crazy mountains. We hunted elk and deer. It was hard. It was DIY public land hunting. We weren't being guided. And we ended up filling a tag and getting really close to filling a lot of other tags. But I mean, that's hunting, right? We had a short period of time to do it. So our wine selection was unbelievable. You have
a great wine selection.
An incredible wine and whiskey. And then we had wild game for every single dinner. One of the girls did a bear sausage and gravy brunch, which was just phenomenal. So the actual biscuits were made out of bear lard from.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that they reduced down the fat from her husband's bear. Even the biscuits were made out of bear fat. It was pretty incredible. We had elk, pronghorn, all sorts of things. Yeah, I mean, the communal sense in that group was really fun. It was a lot of women that were new to hunting. So it fit that demographic, right? I think we had 3 or 4 lifelong hunters there. The majority of the lifelong hunters were also hunters ed instructors. So I found that to be really interesting. These women that had long been a part of the community, that had been welcomed in, a lot of them, their dads taught them how to hunt, and then they wanted to give back to that community and be a part of their hunter's ed program. So a really incredible group of women. We had 3 women come that were just observers. So they'd never been on a hunt before. They weren't sure if they wanted to do it. It was a really cool experience, and we're doing it again this year. So
now, did you take horses in? Did you trail horses?
No. I bought my mare in December, and then I kind of accidentally ended up picking up another horse this summer. So I feel like that's kind of the nature of horses. You get one, and then somehow they multiply.
Right. You get another.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah. So I've been a horse person my whole life. So it's really fun to kind of transition and think about using my horses in the mountains rather than for performance, which is kind of my background in the equestrian world.
I'm just thinking, if you get that many ladies, they do put down an elk. It'd be nice to quarter it up and put her on a horse and carry it out.
No, I really do. If I can swing it, I will bring them. But I mean, the good news is that if we have 18 to 20 people, nobody has to carry that much weight.
Right. Because you're hunting on national forest, you're not hunting on public land.
Well, national forest is public land.
No, that's what I meant. Private land. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, no, we're not hunting on private. We're hunting totally on public, BLM. And then we did hunt some areas that in Montana are called block management access. So it's public access to private land.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show tonight. Before we go, can I take a moment and say thank you? Listen, as we started the Whitetail Rendezvous podcast journey, we had no idea what to expect. But after 4 years, we received a ton of feedback from our over 400,000 listeners and climbing to 500,000. Speaking of which, we are now closing in on over 600 featured guests. Thank you. And a quick shout out to all those who have left an iTunes review and your feedback. I get those and really appreciate it. And it's awesome to see what you have to say, and we do read every single one of them. And I just want you to know that I am incredibly grateful for your kind words regarding the show. And all of the ratings and reviews help us attract more listeners. And if you're one of those new listeners, welcome. Great to have you. By the way, if you haven't taken the time to rate and review our show and like the Hunting on Private Land strategy on how to get permission to hunt a private property, go to whitetailrendezvous.com as a special gift for just rating and reviewing our show. When you get there, look for the start button to get the details. Listen, I'll share you the top technique from some of the top hunters in the country on how do they get permission to hunt on private land. I'll share with you the exact techniques they use to get permission. As my way of saying thanks for rating and reviewing the show on iTunes. So join us next time. And remember, we're all on this journey together, learning, sharing, and becoming 365 hunters.
So basically, you just sign in to a box, and then you're able to hunt like the alfalfa fields for whitetails. But we were surrounded by a lot of national forests too. We hunted state land, and we did hunt a little bit of private land that we got permission to hunt. So I'm definitely not like a public land snob. You know, like if I have the opportunity to hunt private land, and it's the right ethical opportunity for me, like I'm going to take it.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, right? Why not?
Yeah, it makes it easier for camping and setting up your wall tents and all that. I mean,
yeah, we actually had a great national forest campsite like up in the mountains, but we had major gale winds when we were setting up the wall tents. So it was a scene. Like I wish that someone had been filming it because it was like America's Funniest Home Videos, like watching all these women like holding onto the tents. And we got it.
Just think of that in and of itself, just setting up camp.
Oh yeah, setting up camp is one of the toughest parts of camp.
Yeah, hunting is easy.
Well, we set up a huge wall tent that it fit all 18 of us in there. So, I mean, we not for sleeping, but like we could actually do like a full circle of all of us in the tent around the fire and eating there. And yeah, I mean, it was just a lot of fun. It was a lot different than when I went turkey camping with all guys and decided that I should probably set up my own tent because they were all farting too much. So I guess maybe there's a stereotype for you too. A women's camp is a lot less smelly than a men's camp.
Definitely. And it's got to be a biological function of how we process food.
Oh, it was so funny. Yeah.
What can I say? Well, how would you like to summarize our discussion this afternoon?
Oh, I just think that there's like you said earlier, I mean, we're all here around the campfire. I think that there's room for more people. I think there's room for different people. I think there's room for all perspectives. And when you welcome that kind of diversity to the table, like it's honestly just a lot more fun. So yeah, I appreciate you having me on a lot. And the conversation for me is exactly the kind of conversation that I want to have. It's two-sided, it's lighthearted. And I think that when we keep it that way, like we all win.
I would agree, and I think you just summarized it beautifully with it's about having fun, because I can't imagine 18 women not having fun in the mountains, yeah. In a wall tent, that a gale force wind's trying to blow it over.
It was hysterical. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we still put meat on the table, and that felt like a real accomplishment, especially in that scenario. So, like you said, we're all just hunters, right? Yeah.
Nicole, it's just been a pleasure, and I can't wait till next time. And on behalf of hundreds of thousands of listeners for Whitetail Rendezvous, thank you so much. And folks, one more time, how do people get to GearJunkie?
Just go to GearJunkie.com. Pretty easy.
All right. Thank you so much, Nicole.
No, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.